welcome everyone. Welcome back to our Wandering Conversation series, our series where we talk with people that either we have a history with that I think we need to know, or people that can offer us something to learn as we find ourselves sheltered in place. And today I'm excited because we'll be talking with a friend of mine that goes back, way back to times before I was even in seminary. Reverend Angela Whitenhill-Shields is part of the National Benevolent Association, which is a major part of our Disciples of Christ denomination. So, Angela, I'll let you introduce yourself, but thanks for doing this. Thanks for taking some time and talking with us today.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. It's good to see you all. Well, I don't see you, but I'm sure it's good to feel your presence through your pastor.
Yes.
I am actually, the NBA is your health and social service ministry. So I appreciate you naming that. We are here just to come alongside disciples like yourself that are doing really cool, innovative work in health and wellness work. Also to offer resources and to create communities of compassion and care. And so I'm located in Raleigh, our headquarters in St. Louis, so we're all over the country. I currently I'm a manager of our mental health initiative, which really came out of a resolution from a GA that our church wanted to be a welcoming and affirming church to people who had mental illness or mental health challenges. And so NBA took it on. And over the years, we've crafted this initiative that just really works to, again, resource the church, create communities around this work, and do innovative programming. So that is what we do for the church.
Yeah, I thought it'd be interesting to talk with you now that we find ourselves, most of the country finds ourselves sheltered in place or stay in place, however you want to describe it. I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about the mental health aspect of being inside your home for so long and in such a stressful environment, knowing people that most of us probably know somebody that's gotten sick, maybe has even succumbed to the virus. But before we get into that, could you tell me a little bit about yourself? I'd like to get into to learn a little bit more. What was your journey to becoming a licensed clinical social worker? Can you talk just briefly about your journey?
It was a wild ride. I love that this is called Wilderness. The funny thing is I started in the entertainment industry in LA, which I'll leave that open, but through just different happen chance, honestly, of what I want to do, figure out, I would ask questions when I was amongst people, that nobody else is asking around, why did they just make that comment, or who's their parent and what happened here? And so I just found myself over time, people were like, you should look at therapy. And so I was really interested in doing therapy and figured I'd go get a degree and then go back to Hollywood and be a Hollywood therapist. But I was always active in ministry in the church. And so I was like, well, I'll just get a degree in seminary just because it's fun, and ended up doing a dual degree. And that's where we met. And the seminary program rocked my world, changed Union Theological Seminary, changed my life, and just completely shifted my interests. And so when I did finish, I was a dual social work student and a dual theological student. When I got into the social work part of things, I was really interested in how religion and faith practices and spirituality can help mental health treatment, but probably more interested in how it actually could hinder at times. And just cultural competence and whatnot. And so post-graduation, served as a chaplain and a therapist at a residential treatment facility in Denver, which was a historic disciples organization. And just really was interested in things like religious trauma, like when something happened in a religious setting, or the ways in which people's understanding of God and practices could actually get us to a better place, or vice versa. And so that's a long
right. No, I get it. And you're seeing that. You're seeing that in the response to this virus, with the churches that are still having services in the midst of what's going on.
It's so much. There's so much. What I love about faith is it's free, and it's free to be interpreted. And then mental health, which we'll probably talk about, when it comes to people's understanding, can be fatigued. Our mental health can be fatigued. It can be altered. And so depending on how we're making sense of our faith or who we're listening to, it could really lead us, unfortunately, into not healthy situations. And that's where I was really drawn to is how do you catch the people who maybe had a negative encounter with the church or with theology or whatnot. And then how do you help the people, those of us who are ministers, really understand the brain and mental health, so that when we are preaching and praying and doing different things, we're helping mental wellness. that makes sense. And so that's what we do in the initiative. But in this particular moment, there's so much to know and see in that way. So
Right. Yes, definitely so. And I know the NBA, so the National Benevolent Association, don't want to get them confused, but the NBA is putting out a lot of information
yes,
right now in regards to the mental health aspect of this
yes.
virus. Can you talk a little bit about, as a therapist, what are some of your concerns as we hunker down in our homes and in our apartments? What are some of the concerns for both adults and especially for children as our lives are just kind of brought to a halt and interrupted suddenly?
Yes. What you mentioned, I'll say in terms of the resources, we just finished our soul care moments, which we've been doing every week, and really focused this week on Hosanna moments and this idea of finding kind of what you can do. And so that leads me to in the home. I think whenever there's a major disaster or crisis, there's actually like a psychological journey we all take where the first section you're in disbelief and then you turn into this kind of like a heroic space where you have this agency and you're going to try to figure it out. And then there's that's like the first 3 days or the first 3 weeks. But
Hmm.
then there's this moment where it prolongs and there's a major drop off in morale and emotion. And when you're really sinking into the reality, and I think as a therapist, but also as the NBA, we're aware that we are still in it and we're still moving through it. And so I think a biggest concern is unprocessed emotion and unprocessed anxiety. Anxiety is not bad, and anger and irritation and embarrassment, all these negative emotions are not bad, but they become toxic if we don't have spaces to articulate them. And right now we're all in our houses, so in our other, we might go to work and make crude jokes, or we might go hang out at the football field, and somehow we get it out in ways. But right now we may not, even in church, our church online, if there's not a space to interact or communicate, we might just be kind of holding it all in.
Mm.
um, the other thing that I want to stress to everybody is just really just movement. People, I work online, so I'm always on the computer. But that transition from not being outside the house to being on the computer all the time, you don't realize your body doesn't move because your
Right.
brain is moving. So you literally can get a crick in your neck if you're always down on your phone, or and if you're in a small space. So just really people moving and moving intentionally, walking stairs and walking around their house and whatnot. um, I think those two things are probably the most. There's one more thing that I think people don't think about as much. We do hear a lot, and I will say we do hear a lot about potential domestic violence in homes, which
Mhm.
is being on the rise. And just the anxiety or attention of, you're with your family all the time and loss of job and all these things hitting you. But we're really not, I don't know, thinking about a lot of people who live alone is something I really want to
Mm.
pay attention to. We're not stressed out about children in that way, but we have no one that actually touches us for a long time, or no one to talk to. And so I would, that population I think about, and as you mentioned, children, this is going to be a major part of their formation. This is going to be
Mm.
just like
Mhm.
9/11 was for me, or this idea of the country stopping and school stopping. And again, where are they able to process that? And so
Mhm.
I'm hoping, in addition to math and English and everybody trying to keep what was going, that we stop and just go, hey, how you doing? How are
Mhm.
you making sense of this? I've had some friends, babies, who are you going to get it, mom? They're also nervous, and just giving kids the space to have that conversation, knowing that they hold all the emotions we hold, but it might come out in coloring on the wall when you told them not to, or
Mhm. Right.
it will come out in behavioral issues. And so we just think they're being, rowdy and, being, they're not at school, but it could really be anxiety. It could
Mhm.
be depression. It could be these things in our children, but they
Mhm.
don't have the words to articulate. And so
Sure.
um, those populations, people living alone and our kids, I think I'm really thinking about in terms of
Uh-huh.
who's reaching out to them.
Sure. So a couple of follow-ups on that. One is I recognize the crash in myself. Like when this initially happened, I felt that rush of energy and adrenaline to do something, and then I guess it was probably 8, 9 days later, I woke up and I just couldn't do anything. It was like I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to do anything. I felt that crash, and um, and so what are some signs that we can look for to help prepare ourselves? Because we know something is going to come if it hasn't already come. What are maybe some signs we can look for in ourselves that we know we need to address something mentally or psychologically in ourselves?
Definitely. There's so many different ones depending on, what
Sure.
you're looking for. But I will say generally for those of us where this is newer, so I'll start with that, where you
Mhm.
just kind of put shelter in place, and you're kind of moving. One of the signs that we've been telling people, pace yourself, like pace yourself, is when you just feel extra busy. And it's like, wait, I'm not even working now, or I'm working from home, or why am I always so busy, so busy?
Mhm.
Sometimes it could just be mentally wired, mentally moving. And so in a moment where you used to drive from work or you used to take the train or something and you could
Mhm.
just kind of zone, you don't have that stop
Yeah.
time, or you're constantly on your phone, or think you have communications coming, emails, texts, and everything. And so just this idea of, if you're feeling really busy and really stressed or mentally kind of tired before your crash, it's probably that, you talked about that energy.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's our way to kind of gain control or somehow figure out. So we're constantly moving, and I would encourage us to just embrace the slowdown sometimes, and embrace the unknown, or these ways of making time in our day. The other day, I actually had put on this song my friend sent me, and danced with my child. My child's 6 months old.
Mm.
I haven't danced in, I don't know, a year, like just on the fly. Like I've not just kind of danced in my house alone. It's kind of weird,
Mhm.
but I was just like, I have to just kind of unplug.
Right.
For those of us who are maybe already at burnout and already at, like, I'm there, noticing a strong emotion. So really, really, really angry, or really, really weepy.
Mhm.
That's okay. Like, first of all, it's okay. In fact, our emotions are, in the beginning, you're like, you're okay, and you're going to make it work. You're going to be really, centered. And then you get that right before that break, you're like completely overwhelmed. And so you might cry for no reason, or you might yell at your kid for no reason, but that would be a sign that, like, my emotions need space to express
Mhm.
themselves. My brain is moving so fast, and I haven't processed anything.
Mhm.
So I just need to process what I'm feeling. I need to cry.
Mhm.
I need to just let it go. I need to kind of, take time for myself. And then post that crash, I would say it, the signs that it's turning into mental illness is that's a whole other kind of degree.
Sure.
And I'll just articulate quickly. Mental illness is really when your natural coping skills don't pull you back out.
Mhm.
Most of us will hit the crash, be low, and then kind of come back out. For those of us who can't come back out, there are different signs for different diagnoses for those.
Mhm.
But for those of us who hit this crash and we sleep, or we hit the moment, the when you're there, I think it's important to be vulnerable, to be completely open, to really articulate what you need to loved ones, to seek intimate conversations. So
Mhm.
not surface things, but reach out to the people who, you can tell them where you're really at.
Mhm.
And then being affirmed and being heard. It
Mhm.
usually really helps when you cry and somebody goes, it's cool, I cried too. I yelled at my kid too. But that time to really think about it
Mhm.
honestly, I think is helpful. And then you learn how to pace yourself. You
Mhm.
learn how to, one day you're heroic, one day you're like, I'm checking out, I'm not helping anybody, and really kind of
Right.
taking it day by day.
Right.
Mhm.
And also thinking about the person that lives alone, as we record this, the New York governor just said he expects this to go on into July.
Oh,
Um, so, so it doesn't look like it's coming to us
uh,
in anytime soon. But what what are some ways that, I guess there's two sides of this question. What are some ways that the individual who's living alone can help care for themselves? And then
mhm.
also, what are some creative ways that communities like churches can care for people who are living alone, even though we're not able to physically touch them?
Definitely. Man, I just think that, and this depends on your personality, right?
Sure.
So some people may not need people as much as other people might need people in that
Right.
way. But I think I want to stress the intimate conversation
Hmm.
and the vulnerable conversation. So you can be on a Zoom call with your friends from college or something, or be on a text, but you can be on a call for 2 seconds and have an intimate moment, and that really sustain you emotionally.
Hmm.
So I would encourage people, if you're going to use, I have a love-hate relationship with technology. I'll put that out there. I love it. I use it, but technology, for entertainment, can be really abrasive and bombarding. And
Hmm.
I tell people, when it comes to entertainment, just think of most technologies there to make money off of you. Period. Like
Hmm.
that's the only reason why they're there.
Right.
So you want to make sure, if you're going to use technology, that there's a proper exchange. If after I watch the show, do I feel loved? Do I feel whole? Do I
Mhm.
feel, do I feel heard? Do I feel, it might be an escape, that's fine. But if we
Mhm.
escape for 3 months, that's not okay, right?
Right.
Um, so if I'm gonna use technology, I want to make sure I'm connecting, particularly if I'm by myself.
Mhm.
Um, and this sounds weird, but you touch yourself,
Mm.
literally massage your body, take a bath, take a shower, like be intentional about your other four senses, what you smell, what you hear, what you taste, and being mindful of that. So you're aware of your body in that
Mhm.
way. When we're in technology, we're only in our mind a lot of times,
Right.
and moving around the games. And so if somebody comes and touches me, I'm now putting my body in a way that I might not alone. And I think like having a friend of mine, we have like weekly calls. My
Mhm.
family's doing weekly calls, kind of having something set in stone. So you know that if somehow you're having a hard day, there's a call. You don't have to reach out and say, "Hey, I'm having a hard day," but you have these structured, intimate points. I think for congregations, creating space for intimate conversations. So
Mhm.
the services are great, but what if we just all get on and talk to each other? Can I
Mm.
check in with Sister so and so that I've never really talked to her this way, but every time I come a Sunday, we sit by each other. So maybe her and I do a Zoom call. Like
Mhm.
outside of watching each other, but really kind of connecting in that
Mhm.
way. Um, I don't know if I'm tangenting, but this idea of we
Sure.
can have connection through
Yeah.
the way we use technology.
Sure. Thank you.
Um,
And just briefly, could you talk about the soul care and what NBA, all the resources NBA has that people's available
Definitely,
for people?
yes, we are not frantically. We are moving quickly to create more and more resources. But right now, through the Mental Health Initiative, we have been doing weekly soul care moments, about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, that are this kind of integration of ministry and devotion, and also just healthy psychological practices. So it's at the first, a minute we breathe, and really just to stop and breathe is something most people don't do. So
Right.
you're sitting in silence with a bunch of other people for the first minute, or we're offering these kind of nuggets of, looking for gratitude, or the different themes on how you might use these skills to cope.
Mm.
Um, but in addition to the soul care moment, we're actually currently thinking of all these other kind of ways that we can put out information, whether it's educational or
Mm.
support for our clergy. So look for those to come.
Mhm.
One of the things that is in the process of is really thinking about grants and funding for our partners, and certain ministries. And so hopefully I can send that to you, Stephen, when that's out. But
Sure.
how do we support, tangibly, some of our partners that are really struggling to keep afloat in terms of what they do? So
Mm.
I will email that to you so that you can get
Awesome.
that out.
That'd be
Um,
great. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Well, any final things? I guess we haven't really hit much. We've hit a little bit on children. I guess for me personally, and for you, that's kind of important. I see we'll just close on this, I guess. But for me personally, kids are important in the sense that we have to tell them no a lot now. Like we were at the park the other day, and Caden saw these kids playing, and she said, "I want to go make a new friend," and we said, "No, you can't go make a new friend." So
yeah.
right now, it's not safe to be around people. Um,
Definitely.
and so
Mm.
what are the kids operate differently than adults?
Mhm.
So what are some ways that adults
Mm.
can feed
Mhm.
feed into kids,
Definitely.
what's the right way to frame this question? How can we take care of our kids?
Yeah. And now what I'm hearing is like even communicate with them. Like how do we do stuff where they register the moment, but also a heart space? And a few things I will say, and then I'll maybe go to some practical things we can do. But
Mhm.
generally, children are much more concrete. So if you say, there's germs on the wall, they're going to think there's germs all over the wall, which right now there might be, right?
Right.
But really being aware of our language and how we talk, not to be paranoid about just free flowing, but taking a little bit more time to explain some things that might seem tedious, or something that like washing your hands for 20 seconds. Some child will be like, well, what's 20 seconds? How long is that, mom?
Mhm.
And so just really thinking about the time to explain. There's a lot of anxiety that parents are feeling,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of stress that we're feeling, that sometimes we think if we smile, the kid doesn't, they think we're fine. but the children really pick up on our emotional energy. And
Mm.
so I encourage parents, and this is outside of COVID-19, when I was a parent kid therapist, that when you're feeling stressed, it's okay to express that and go, man, mommy's so stressed, or I'm so angry right now. And
Mm.
then articulating why, because the child will actually learn their coping skills by watching you cope. So if every time you get stressed out, you turn on the TV, then they're going to do the same thing, right? Which is not so bad, right?
Right.
But knowing that because you're in such close quarters, just if you stop and we do screen breaks, that's one of the practical things that
Mm.
we used to do with my kids. We would let them scream, like scream, 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 and we do a scream choir. So when they go low, they go low, I go high. And when you do that, when you're frustrated, they'll start saying, wow, I got all my anger out because I screamed
Mhm.
with you, or
Oh,
I
wow.
let them hit my hands if I'm mad. When you're mad, you feel like hitting something, you can't hurt people, but I'm going to allow you to hit my hands. And then we talk about the physical, what do you do when you're angry? You might squeeze your hands and let it out. But really being intentional about your emotional process,
Mm.
how you're coping, and
Mhm.
then thinking about ways to articulate that in kid form. Some cool ways to articulate my own stuff to kids I used to work with were through games,
Mhm.
in the sense of, um, Miss Angela is stressed today, so I have a lot of jitters in my body. Where are the jitters in your body? And
Mhm.
I say, well, my jitters are on my back. And then we, talk about how we get them out our back, and we do this. Also thinking about uh, just fun.
Mhm.
I know school is a big stress right now for so many people.
Yes.
And I have no idea how that's going to work out. I think every city is doing it differently. And I think the pressure of a parent to figure that out is so hard, that
Mhm.
one of the things that kids learn the best when they're playing. Like that
Mhm.
is, as therapy, we usually do play therapy because it doesn't register. Talk therapy
Right.
doesn't register. So
Right.
if there's ways that you can come off the page or the screen and play with your kid and
Mhm.
maybe integrate their lesson, it'd be funner and easier.
Mhm.
And don't tell, I know my teachers, if there's just play with your kid and don't worry about the lesson.
Uh-huh.
When there's high stress, I think that kind of playful moment of connection is going to be more impactful.
Mhm.
Last little thing I'll say is, if there's a lesson or a wisdom that you want to teach your child, play is a perfect way to do it. An
Mhm.
example might be if you're playing with your dolls, and in the doll scene or the Lego scene, this big outbreak happens in the doll scene.
Mhm.
And then oh my goodness, there's germs all over. And then you let the kid, respond. You can see through that child how they're feeling.
Mm.
The doll might cry, and then your child is actually crying for the doll. Or you might say, it's okay, we're going to stop and pray right now and wash our hands. And the
Mm.
child is actually in play mode, but they're actually learning
Mhm.
things. And so whether it's theology or how to wash hands or how
Mhm.
to de-stress, you can play in make-believe world with them. And I'll encourage you to let them have a lot of freedom in that make-believe world too. Like
Mhm.
if they say, bad things, try not to do the no, but in make-believe world, just the articulation of why that may or may not be good. It does register differently than when you just tell your kid,
Right.
don't touch that.
Right.
So nutshell, I know it's like a lot of information, but
Oh,
play
that's really good.
and connection as much as you can.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Those are really practical and good piece of advice. Well, thank you for taking this time out. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you joining us and giving us this information. I will have a link out to go to the NBA website to get all this information there too. So.
I'll just say, well, I'll say one last little things I would love to say is it's okay to slow down. It's okay to pause. I really do think God's gonna meet us in our gaps, and so
Mhm.
hopefully we're not feeling too stressed to produce or to be in a way in this time. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks.